Hello and welcome back for another unit of Virginia Studies. In this unit, we are going to be studying Virginia in the 1900s. Part 1 is all about technological innovations of the 20th century. Up until this point in our course, we have studied people and events in Virginia and in the United States during time periods in which life was almost unrecognizable from our lives today. But now that we've reached the 20th century, you're going to see society turn into something much more familiar, and it's going to happen very quickly. Think about your cell phone, your family car, all of your devices, our ability to take a vacation across the world, and so much more. All of these possibilities were first developed in the 1900s. We also saw people fight for their rights, which we view as basic rights and often take for granted. Some major world events impacted society greatly and caused permanent changes to society as a whole. As you learn more about all of these advancements, I want you to think about how they directly impact your own life today. Our one learning target today is the following. I can describe how Virginia transitioned from a rural agricultural society to an urban industrial society. So let's go back to the beginning of the 20th century. In the last unit, we talked a little bit about the Industrial Revolution. During that time, society began to move away from an agricultural economy in favor of the better paying factory jobs in the city. People moved from rural towns to urban cities. Another reason people began to shift away from agricultural work was that old systems of farming were no longer working efficiently and crop prices were low, so they couldn't make as much money. Even so, the invention of the tractor and some other innovations that allowed for the mechanization of farming kept some in the business, as we will always need farms for our food. As a result of this shift towards an urban industrial society, there were more people living in any given area. Having an urban population means having many more people per square mile than in a rural town. More people meant a need for improved transportation. We already know that transportation was changing, with railroads and cars becoming more readily available to businesses and the general public. All of this remains true into the 1900s, but we also begin to see more growth in other areas. In 1903, Wilbur and Orville Wright were the first to fly a powered airplane. Then, in 1914, the first passenger plane took flight, and by 1927, less than 25 years after the first flight, the first transatlantic flight took place, flying from New York all the way to France. It seemed that once technological advancements were being made, everything grew bigger much, much faster. So now, in addition to all of the train stations, streetcars ran through big cities, interstates were being built to connect the country, and airports were needed for the new popular mode of transportation. Don't be fooled though. Transportation technology wasn't the only technology seeing massive innovation. Take a moment to think again about your cell phone, laptop, tablet, whatever device you have. These are all very convenient and can do basically anything we can think up. It wasn't always that way though. The first computer was developed in the 1930s and it got its name from its original purpose, computing large math problems and for use in the engineering field. Prior to the first computer, a computer was a person who computed those math problems. Those first computers took up entire rooms and required multiple people to make them function. By the 70s and 80s, they were able to be made small enough to be sold for personal use, and they could do more than just compute math problems. Then, in the 90s, AOL began mailing out CDs with the internet on them to be downloaded on computers. After that, computer technology continued to grow exponentially to the point where we can now carry computers around in our pocket. Obviously, the whole country went through some major changes in the 1900s, and there was a lot of innovation happening. But how does this all relate to Virginia? Up until the 1900s, Virginia was a very typical rural agricultural society. People lived fairly far apart, and they made their living mostly through farming. But without slavery as a cheap labor source and low crop prices, many could no longer afford to run a farm. So people began to move to cities like Richmond, Roanoke, and Northern Virginia for jobs in factories, coal mining, technology, and government. All of those technological innovations actually happened in Virginia because people were leaving farming. The computer technology boom brought many jobs to Northern Virginia, where cities had already developed around Washington, D.C., which also provided many jobs working for our federal government. Richmond was also a hotspot for government and technology jobs. Now more than ever, Virginia and the United States were connected, and the whole world was truly connected for the first time in history. This would prove both beneficial and deadly, but we'll get to that in the next few videos. For now, take a moment to consider how your life would be different if any of these innovations were not made when they were. What if we left well enough alone when we developed the first computer that only answered math problems? How would that affect your life today? What if nobody considered a flying machine? All right, we've made it to the end. Take a moment to ponder these self-reflection questions. 1, how did Virginia transition from a rural agricultural society to an urban industrial society? And what technological innovations from the 1900s have impacted your own life today? Once you've pondered that, you are done, and I will see you next time.